Did you look at her? What was she doing?
She wasn't fighting.
This tragic story began with Shanann Watts, a vibrant, determined mother of two, living what appeared to be a picture-perfect life in Frederick, a small town in Colorado, alongside her husband, Chris. She had just returned from a business trip, eager to reconnect with her family. That evening, after putting her daughters to bed, Shanann hoped to rekindle intimacy with Chris. But what started as a hopeful night turned into a nightmare. Chris confessed to having an affair and demanded a divorce. Heartbroken, Shanann lashed out, vowing he'd never see their kids again. Little did she know that those words would soon take on a chilling irony. She would be the one who would never see her children again. It all began the night Shanann returned from a business trip to Arizona. She and her close friend, Nicole Atkinson, arrived at Shanann's house in the early hours of August 13, 2018. Exhausted but happy to be home, Shanann was eager to see her husband, Chris, and her daughters, Bella and Celeste. After putting her kids to bed, she decided to reconnect with Chris in an effort to fix what had been a strained relationship. They talked, but the conversation quickly took a shocking turn. Chris admitted he was having an affair and wanted a divorce. Devastated, Shanann shouted at him in anger, telling him he would never see their children again. But Shanann had no idea that she wouldn't live to see another day. The Watts family lived in Frederick, Colorado, a small town just 30 miles north of Denver. With a population of around 14,000, Frederick was a tight-knit community. Originally established as a mining town in the early 20th century, it had evolved over the decades and now hosted a mix of industrial and engineering jobs. Chris worked for Anadarko Petroleum, one of the town's largest employers, while Shanann had built a career as a representative for Lavelle, a wellness company. Shanann was born on January 10, 1984 in New Jersey. She met Chris in 2010 through Facebook, a connection that seemed almost serendipitous. Despite living in different states, Chris in North Carolina and Shanann in New Jersey, the two struck up a conversation that quickly blossomed into a long-distance relationship. By 2012, they were married in Charlotte, North Carolina, and soon after, they relocated to Colorado to start a new chapter in their lives. Their first child, Bella Marie Watts, was born in 2013, and Shanann was overjoyed. Bella was a calm and loving child, often described as the family's little angel. 2 years later, in 2015, the couple welcomed their second daughter, Celeste Cece Catherine Watts. Cece was the opposite of Bella, energetic and spirited, always keeping her parents on their toes. Both children were Shanann's pride and joy. Life wasn't without its challenges, though. Shanann had been diagnosed with lupus, an autoimmune disease that caused her chronic pain and fatigue. This made her pregnancies particularly difficult, but she persevered, determined to be the best mother she could be. Despite these hardships, she often posted about her gratitude for her family, calling Chris her rock and sharing videos of their seemingly happy life together. However, the couple's finances were less stable than their smiling social media posts suggested. In 2015, they filed for bankruptcy, struggling under the weight of a $3,000 monthly mortgage and other debts. Chris's parents added to the tension, frequently clashing with Shanann, whom they considered controlling and high maintenance. They even refused to attend the couple's wedding, creating a rift that never fully healed. By 2018, cracks in Chris and Shanann's marriage were becoming more apparent. Shanann often traveled for work, which left Chris to take care of the girls. During this time, Chris began an affair with a co-worker, Nicole Kessinger. While Shanann was working hard to support her family and save her marriage, Chris was growing distant and increasingly deceptive. In May 2018, Shanann announced that she was pregnant with their third child. She shared the news with Chris in a sweet video, wearing a t-shirt that read, "Oops, we did it again." Chris seemed happy in the video, but his enthusiasm quickly faded. Shanann later confided in friends that Chris was acting cold and distant, a sharp contrast to the loving husband he once was. On Father's Day, June 17, 2018, Shanann posted a heartfelt message on Facebook, praising Chris as an amazing dad. But behind the scenes, she was growing increasingly suspicious of his behavior. He was working out more, spending extra time at work, and seemed glued to his phone. Despite her efforts to rekindle their romance, Chris appeared checked out. By August 13, 2018, Shanann's worst fears were confirmed. That morning after returning home from her trip, she vanished. Her friend Nicole Atkinson became concerned when Shanann didn't respond to texts or calls and missed a scheduled doctor's appointment. Nicole drove to the Watts house and noticed Shanann's car was still in the driveway. Her shoes, ones she always wore, were inside. Nicole, knowing Shanann's medical history, feared something was wrong and called the police. Chris arrived home shortly after and allowed officers to search the house. They found Shanann's purse, phone, and medication, all things she wouldn't leave behind. Even more unsettling was her wedding ring, left on the nightstand. Chris claimed that Shanann had taken the kids to a friend's house after an emotional conversation that morning. But as police began piecing together the timeline, his story didn't add up. A breakthrough came when detectives reviewed surveillance footage from the Watts neighbor, Nate. The camera showed Chris backing his truck into the garage around 5:27 a.m. and loading items into it. Strangely, there was no sign of Shanann or the children leaving the house later that day, as Chris had claimed. The footage painted a troubling picture, and investigators began to suspect foul play. On August 14th, Chris appeared on local news, pleading for his family's safe return. With tears in his eyes, he begged anyone with information to come forward. But his performance raised more questions than answers. Detectives were already digging into his background and discovered his affair with Nicole Kessinger. Nicole, unaware of the full extent of Chris's lies, cooperated with investigators and revealed details about their relationship. Detectives decided to confront Chris with a polygraph test on August 15th. The results were damning. He failed miserably. Under mounting pressure, Chris confessed to killing Shanann, but claimed it was in a fit of rage after she had allegedly harmed their daughters. However, this version of events didn't align with the evidence. When detectives confronted Chris Watts about failing the polygraph, he tried to brush it off, acting like it wasn't a big deal. But the investigators weren't buying it. They pressed him, asking direct questions about his affair, his wife, his daughters, and his emotional state. It didn't take long for the cracks in Chris's story to show. Under the pressure, with no solid lies left to lean on, Chris finally confessed to murdering Shanann Watts. Initially, Chris claimed he acted in a fit of rage. He told investigators he found Shanann smothering their two daughters, Bella and Celeste, early that morning, and he killed her in retaliation. But this was just another twisted fabrication. 3 months later, before his trial, Chris admitted to the full, chilling truth. He had murdered all three of them, Shanann and their two daughters. On November 19, 2018, Chris Watts was sentenced to 5 life terms without the possibility of parole. 1 for Shanann and 2 for Bella and Celeste, who were both under the age of 12. Justice had been served, but the horrifying details of that August morning left scars that would never heal. So what led to that fateful day? Let's rewind to the events leading up to the tragedy. 3 days before the murders, Shanann was on a business trip in Arizona with her close friend Nicole Atkinson. Everything seemed normal, but Shanann began noticing troubling signs about Chris. The day before she returned home, she saw a charge on their shared account, over $60 spent at a local restaurant. Chris claimed he had gone to a baseball game with friends, but Shanann, who knew the restaurant well, realized that amount didn't match up for just one person. It sparked a deep suspicion. Was Chris cheating on her? When Shanann returned home early in the morning, on August 13th, she already felt something was wrong. In later interviews, Chris admitted that Shanann had tried to reconnect with him after her trip, initiating intimacy that night before they both went to sleep. But by 4 a.m., things had taken a drastic turn. Chris woke Shanann up and told her he was having an affair. He didn't stop there. He said he wanted out of their marriage. The revelation led to an explosive argument. Shanann, shocked and heartbroken, told Chris he would never see his children again. That comment, Chris later claimed, pushed him over the edge. In that moment of rage, Chris straddled Shanann as she lay in bed and strangled her to death. As horrifying as this act was, the nightmare didn't stop there. Their 4-year-old daughter Bella walked into the room and saw her mother's lifeless body. She looked up at her father and asked, "What's wrong with Mommy?" Chris, now fully in cover-up mode, lied to his daughter, telling her that Shanann was sick but would be fine. He wrapped Shanann's body in a bedsheet dragged her downstairs, and loaded her into his truck. Then, in a chilling decision, he put Bella and 3-year-old Celeste into the truck as well, placing them right next to their mother's body. The drive to the oil field site, Survey 319, took about an hour. Chris knew the site well. He had worked there many times. Once they arrived, he smothered Celeste first, using a blanket to take her life while Bella watched. Bella, realizing what was happening, pleaded with her father, "Daddy, no!" But Chris showed no mercy. He killed Bella next, silencing her cries forever. After murdering his daughters, Chris buried Shanann in a shallow grave near the oil tanks and placed Bella and Celeste's small bodies into separate tanks. It was a cold, calculated attempt to hide his crimes. In the hours that followed, Chris continued his day as if nothing had happened. On his way to work, he looked up the lyrics to Metallica's song Battery, which includes the line, "Cannot kill the family." He also made several phone calls to the children's school to unenroll them, to a realtor to discuss selling their house, and to Nicole Kessinger, his mistress, to talk about their future together. When Chris eventually confessed to the murders, he revealed the locations of the bodies. Investigators found the bedsheet Shanann had been wrapped in and confirmed Chris's disturbing timeline of events. Nicole Kessinger, unaware of the full extent of Chris's lies, cooperated with the police. She revealed that Chris had told her he was separated and in the process of divorcing Shanann. She didn't know Shanann was pregnant or that Chris had still been living with his family. Their affair had started in mid-June when Shanann and the kids were away visiting family in North Carolina for 5 weeks. While Shanann and the girls were out of town, Chris saw an opportunity to live his double life freely. Nicole was the center of his attention, and he didn't bother hiding his excitement about their new relationship. But when Shanann returned, cracks in their marriage became undeniable. She confided in friends that Chris was growing distant and unresponsive, leaving her feeling hurt and confused. In the weeks leading up to the murders, Chris became more withdrawn. Shanann tried to hold their family together, but Chris had already checked out. During their last family vacation, Shanann noticed how cold and uninterested Chris had become. Despite being apart for weeks, he showed no affection, frustrating Shanann to the point of venting her feelings to close friends. Chris later admitted in prison interviews that he had been planning the murders for some time. He wanted to start fresh with Nicole, free of financial burdens, family responsibilities, and emotional consequences. He saw his wife and children as obstacles to the life he envisioned with his mistress. The Watts family home, located at 2825 Saratoga Trail, has remained empty since the murders. Originally valued at over $600,000, it failed to sell due to the notoriety of the case. It's rumored that the property may go up for auction again soon, but for now, it stands as a haunting reminder of the tragedy that unfolded there. Chris Watts will spend the rest of his life in prison for his horrific crimes. In recent interviews, he has expressed regret and claims he feels remorse for his actions. But for many, his words ring hollow. He is forever marked as a monster, a man who betrayed his family in the most unforgivable way. As for the community of Frederick, the scars left by this case run deep. Neighbors, friends, and family members continue to grapple with the unthinkable loss of Shanann, Bella, and Celeste. Their story serves as a grim reminder of the darkness that can hide behind even the most picture-perfect facade.